Edo State Command of the Nigeria Police Force has confirmed the killing of 7 persons on Friday during a communal clash between the people of Gbelemonti and Maidoti communities in the Ovia Southwest local government of Edo State, with the police also arresting a member of the Edo State Vigilante group who shot dead and set ablaze a victim he falsely accused of being a thief out of malice due to misunderstanding the vigilante member had with the deceased, just as the new Commissioner of Police, Enekpen Otimenyin, subjects police personnel in the state to retraining. According to Daily Post newspaper, the Edo State Police Command arrested a member of a local vigilante in Benin City for allegedly killing an artisan and setting his corpse ablaze. The public relations officer of the command, Moses Yamu, disclosed this on Sunday in Benin City, according to the news media. Yamu said the suspect was arrested by operatives of the Textile Mill Road Division following a distress call received from members of the public at about 8 a.m. on February 20, 2025. He said the divisional police officer in charge of the Textile Mill Division received a call that they saw a corpse of a middle-aged man lying under sawdust and burning. According to him, the divisional police officer in charge of the Textile Mill Road Division received a distress call at about 8 a.m. on Thursday, February 20, 2025, from members of the public that they saw a corpse of a middle-aged man covered with sawdust and set ablaze. The DPO mobilized and deployed his operatives to the scene and actually found the corpse burning under the sawdust. They took the corpse to the hospital, but they, however, found that there was a gunshot injury on the back of the deceased's neck. Investigation has already commenced, and we have one suspect in our custody who is the security person of the sawmill at the time the incident happened, he said. Yamu said the case has been transferred to the State Criminal Investigation Department for in-depth investigations, assuring that at the conclusion of the investigation the suspect will be charged to court for murder. Daily Post reported that the deceased, identified as Lasan Osaze Ehabo, was said to have had disagreement with the said local vigilante member, adding that on the fateful day, the deceased was said to be returning home late in the night with his friend when they were accosted on the road near the sawmill by the suspect. The suspect, who was alleged to have been armed with a double-barrel gun, was said to question the deceased while returning late. The suspect was also alleged to have labeled the deceased a thief and accused him of coming to steal in the sawmill. It was further learned that, during the interrogation, the suspect brought out his gun and shot the deceased to death. He was to have dragged the deceased from the roadside into the sawmill where he allegedly gathered the sawdust in the milling company and set his body ablaze. Meanwhile, in her quest to rid the state of crime, the Commissioner of Police, CP Betty Enekpen Otimenyin, directed for the immediate retraining of personnel to enhance their operational capabilities to tackle the challenges ahead. A total of 160, but following the public criticism of President Donald Trump of the United States that the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, is a man who has lost touch with his people and a dictator who refused to conduct election for new leader to take over the affairs of the country. Zelenskyy, while asked if he could resign by a journalist at a press conference organized to mark the 3rd-year anniversary of war in Ukraine, says he would do that if it would bring peace to Ukraine, and he's ready to do that as exchange for Ukraine to be enlisted as a member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. Asked on Sunday at a press conference if he was ready to quit if it ensures peace for Ukraine, Zelenskyy said, "If it guarantees peace for Ukraine, if you really need me to resign, I am ready. I can exchange it for NATO." The Ukrainian president previously had said his country's army will need to double in size if NATO denies its membership to the alliance. Earlier this month, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said that Kyiv joining NATO was unrealistic. "If it is absolutely necessary for me to leave my post, I am ready to do so. I can exchange it for NATO membership. If such conditions exist, then immediately, without prolonged discussions. I am focused on Ukraine's security today and do not intend to remain in power for decades. This is probably my dream, Zelenskyy, who spoke in a native language as interpreted in English language by an interpreter, stated during the press conference marking the 3rd anniversary of the start of the full-scale war in Ukraine. Zelenskyy, in a post on his X social media handle on Sunday, also said, "Ukrainians have come a long way. And this year, we must do everything possible and impossible to achieve a real peace. Peace with security guarantees for our state, with guarantees of dignity and respect for all our people, for everyone who has lived, lives and will live in Ukraine. The people of Ukraine deserve respect, just as every nation on earth does. And just as every person does. Those who are fighting, those who have raised truly heroic sons and daughters. I thank every Ukrainian warrior, all the families of our defenders, and everyone who stands with Ukraine. Thank you for keeping Ukraine alive." We had earlier reported that despite the medical condition that he's under the high flow of oxygen in the hospital over double pneumonia, Pope Francis on Sunday, on the eve of the 3rd year anniversary of the war in Ukraine launched by President Vladimir Putin-led Russian government, called on everyone in the world to remember victims of the war in Ukraine, describing the war which started on February 24, 2022 as painful, shameful for all humanity. Previously, we reported that the Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, has continued his phone conversations with world leaders with a video and written press statement on Saturday saying that the world leaders must ensure that the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, is not allowed to deceive the world again, insisting that Putin has used Russian army, intelligence services and mercenaries over 30 years to bring death to America, Europe, Africa, Middle East, Syria. Despite the medical condition that he's under the high flow of oxygen in the hospital over double pneumonia, Pope Francis on Sunday, on the eve of the 3rd year anniversary of the war in Ukraine launched by President Vladimir Putin-led Russian government, called on everyone in the world to remember victims of the war in Ukraine, describing the war which started on February 24, 2022 as painful, shameful for all humanity. According to local media monitoring the activities of Catholic Church, Vatican News Media, Pope Francis stated this during his Angelus address, which Pope Francis asked the Holy See Press Office to release while he recovered in the hospital. Adding, the Holy Father remembers the imminent 3-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine on the 24th of February 2025, calling it a painful and shameful occasion for all humanity, and saying he renews his solidarity with suffering Ukrainians and for all victims of armed conflicts as he prays for peace. The press release as presented by the Vatican News reads, "Tomorrow marks the 3rd anniversary of the full-scale war against Ukraine, a painful and shameful occasion for all of humanity." Pope Francis expressed this during the Angelus address he chose to have published on Sunday, one day before the 3-year anniversary of the full-scale Russian invasion in Ukraine. The Holy Father has been being treated at Rome's Gemelli Hospital since February 14th, diagnosed with double pneumonia. In his Angelus remarks, the Holy Father remembered, martyred Ukraine. "As I renew my solidarity with the martyred Ukrainian people," the Pope reminded, "I invite you to remember the victims of all armed conflicts and to pray for the gift of peace in Palestine, Israel, and throughout the Middle East, in Myanmar, in Kivu, and in Sudan." The Holy Father also expressed his gratitude for all those who have been praying for him. "In these days, I have received many messages of affection," he noted, saying, "I have been particularly moved by the letters and drawings from children. Thank you for this closeness and for the comforting prayers I have received from all over the world." The Pope concluded, before reassuring, "I entrust everyone to the intercession of Mary and ask you to pray for me." We had reported that the Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, has continued his phone conversations with world leaders with a video and written press statement on Saturday saying that the world leaders must ensure that the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, is not allowed to deceive the world again, insisting that Putin has used Russian army, intelligence services and mercenaries over 30 years to bring death to America, Europe, Africa, Middle East, Syria. This, Zelenskyy stated after he began special defense campaign with phone conversations with world leaders following strained relationship with one of the countries that has majorly assisted Ukraine in its defense against Russia since 2022 when the war began. United States, U.S. President Donald Trump, who threatened to stop military aid to Ukraine, claiming that Ukraine started the war it knows it cannot win, calling President Volodymyr Zelenskyy a modestly successful comedian and a dictator that deceived the
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.